So, hey, Heather Glovack, and welcome to the Tech Bootcamp podcast for our new format. We do our traditional about 2 hour long form podcast, and we did one of those episodes with you in the recent past, and now because of the ongoing relationship we've developed with you, we've been kind enough to co-host with us and do some other things, and we've been able to stay in touch. We thought it'd be a great idea to have you be the first person that does sort of a follow-up to tell us what you've done since we've last spoken, what kinds of things have been working for you, why you did some of the things you're now starting to do or you've done since the last time we've spoken. And another one of the things that we've been doing on this podcast is asking folks to talk to us about things that are either low cost or no cost. And the reason we're asking that is we're getting a lot of questions from folks in the community about how they can heal on a budget. Because we all have budgets, and it is one of the challenges that we face for a lot of different reasons. So, with that sort of quick introduction, why don't you share with us what you've been doing lately and what kinds of things you've done to promote or advance your healing since the last time we've spoken?
Oh, well, I'm going to try to do my best to, make sense of it. I have my notebook right here, and I'm sure there are other Lymies that, are like me that just want to try everything because they're eager to feel better. So if at any time you have a question or I need to slow down, just let me know. Because I also get a little excited when I talk about this stuff. So
you're in good company, Heather.
Yeah, thank you. So I feel like my journey, there's been a lot of ups and downs. Like I was steady for a while, and then it was like I just kind of hit that rock bottom point again where I was getting really dizzy, nauseous, the brain fog, and with the brain fog, it's a very emotional process because you know how productive you are and how sharp you are. So when you're in that fog, it's really challenging. So with that said, I think if I had to go back, as I reflect, I think my main challenge is that I am very hard on myself, for one, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. And also, I allow, the energies around me to kind of dictate how I feel, which is on me. And I think taking responsibility for that and figuring out ways to work through that has been very helpful. And then also, in addition to that, is setting boundaries with others and prioritizing myself, right? So when those things lack, I can tell that I'm starting to fall back into the fog, not feeling well, feeling run down. And I think that truly that's been my biggest obstacle for as long as I can remember. So, as you guys know, or do you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah, I do. So I'm sorry, we both do, and we can certainly be more conversational. But one of the things that we loved about your first podcast, and we've shared this with many other guests on our podcast, is we have this Heather Glovack line that we repeat all the time and have for the last several years, which has been, although it was not my fault that I got sick, I had to take responsibility for my health, right? And that is an important sort of mindset that we have to begin with. And because you articulated that so brilliantly, we've stolen that from you time after time, right? And now you're coming back and you're sharing with us that while you're in the maintenance phase of your healing journey, you found yourself going back and having challenges again. And when you were reconstructing why you were having these challenges, it really was on the mindset or the mental piece of this, not so much the physical piece of this. And you gave us three different issues. You said you're hard on yourself, You said that you absorbed the energy of the people around you, and you said that you weren't always good at setting boundaries for the folks that you're interacting with, and that sort of triple play of mental health issues dragged you back down and put you in a position where you started suffering from brain fog, and you started suffering from, some of the symptoms that you had been able to overcome before you got into the maintenance phase. So talk to us about why you think you're so hard on yourself. Why do you think you're having challenges essentially guarding your mind from the input of other people, and the negative energies that they were sending to you? And how did you now learn to set clearer boundaries so that you're better at guarding your mind and better at guarding your mental health, so that this sort of this loop that we all have in our brain that we're not good enough, stops being the language that we're listening to, and allows you to go back to being healthier and healing?
Yeah. So I think that this is going to be a lifelong practice for me, because, I'm 36 and this has been kind of programmed, and I'm working on rewiring that program. So I don't expect that I'm just going to snap my fingers and that's going to go away. But the first awareness, was my mom. I was not feeling well, right? And my mom literally said to me, "I think your relationship is making you sick." And I was much younger then, and I kind of just brushed it off. But from that point, for some reason, that, comment stuck with me. And I noticed every time that I was falling back into this cycle, it was triggered by, and this isn't anyone else's fault, right? Like, this is on me. And because I started to develop that awareness, I was motivated to find out why. And I don't have like a clear-cut answer on why I struggle with setting boundaries and kind of feeling and absorbing energy. But I know that it is an issue for me. So the practices that I've done, I started working with a Reiki practitioner. So a lot of the different meditations and visualizations have really helped me. And at first I was a little skeptical or resistant to it, but as I fully committed and tried to practice, visualizing like a protection shield around me, it really did help. And then also understanding that just because I don't want to feel someone else's energy or absorb it or take it on doesn't mean I'm a bad person. So I think that was the idea in my head. Well, if I'm not feeling that, or I'm not helping or overextending myself to help, it could be someone that I love, it could be a random person, but I would put that on me. And that's pretty exhausting. So I've learned to be there for others, but not take it on. Right. So like I'm not putting it on me and carrying that around all day, all night. And, that really has been helpful. So not for a second do I think anyone has ever tried to put like negative energies on me. And, I just think that for some reason, I, from a young age, just started to take it on. And, I think that it will be a lifelong practice for me.
But Heather, so many people in the Lyme community, in fact, I think almost all of us can relate to what you're saying, where we are people pleasers, we are afraid to disappoint other people in our lives, and we're constantly absorbing the energy from people around us, more so than I would say, quote unquote, somebody who's normal, right? And it's something that I know I still struggle with daily, and I have to be mindful and have certain practices in place. But I'm curious, Heather, what you're doing specifically. So is it something you're doing in your day-to-day routine to help break those patterns? Or is it something you're doing in the moment, right? If you're around a family member or a friend or a colleague, and there's a lot of bad energy coming because this person is just maybe emotionally unhealthy, is it a practice you're doing in the moment or something you're doing daily to build up this resiliency or this shield, as you called it earlier?
Yeah. So I just have my notebook. It'll help me stay on track. So each morning and each night, I do visualize a protection shield around me. And again, I know that it sounds a little woo-woo or cheesy, but for me, after practicing that for a while, it did click. And then also acknowledging, so if there's something that I feel like I'm starting to take on or it's feeling a little heavier or uncomfortable, I will literally start to get like hives on my neck and chest. So now I start to try and, check in with myself and then take a couple deep breaths and know that I can still love and care about this person, but that whatever they're going through doesn't have to become mine, right? Because then if I'm going down with their energy, how does that serve them or anyone else? It doesn't. So I just try to remember that I'm coming from a place of love and not like, oh no, that's yours. And like, please don't come in my energy sphere. So that's one thing that I do. And then also this actually could also be considered one of the less expensive or actually free modalities that I've been doing. And it's a YouTube channel. It's called Breathwork Beats. And they have different breathing techniques and they post videos frequently. And they take different breath techniques and sequence them together. And that has been really helpful for my nervous system, right? So if my nervous system is already fired up, I don't really have the capacity to even understand that I'm allowing someone else's energy to, affect me, or even not even just someone else's, the world's, right? So the breathwork beats, like, I'm so grateful, that they're sharing.
So Heather, let's talk about the first thing you raised here, which is the protective shield and whether or not that's woo-woo or not. And I'm not, as you know, I'm not a woo-woo guy. So let's talk a little bit about that, because one of the things that Matt and I have observed, after interviewing over 300 folks in this community, is that there are patterns that have developed, right? And one of the patterns that we've now learned as part of interviewing folks and of course going on our own personal development journey is that our mind is something that sends out energy and receives energy, or sends out signals and receives signals, right? And although it may sound woo-woo to imagine a protective shield around you, I think what it does is it first acknowledges that your mind will both send out and receive signals. And the second thing that it does is it recognizes that you have the ability to protect your mind, and you have the responsibility to yourself to make sure you're protecting your mind so that you're not receiving negative energies, which will ultimately cause you to have immunosuppression and then get sick. So let's take it away from this being woo-woo and really talk about it being really practical, which is what we always see from Heather Glovack, who always gives us these really deep and practical approaches of things. It isn't woo-woo, right? It's really a practical step that you can take to first learn how your mind works, and then secondly, how you can protect your mind from receiving negative energy and ultimately become immunosuppressed.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for acknowledging that. Yeah.
So let's talk about let's talk a little bit about this Breathwork Beats site that you found, and we've talked a lot about breath work with a lot of our folks on this podcast. In fact, one of the things we do in our Tick Bite blueprint is we talk about how to calm down the amygdala, because what happens is when our smoke detector in our brain goes off, we get stuck in fight or flight. We can't think any longer. And of course, we know we also can't heal, because when your body is in the protection mode, you're out of healing. And that, of course, makes you vulnerable to these other, bacteria and viruses and protozoa taking off in your body. So talk about how the breath work that you're doing with this YouTube channel, Breathwork Beats, helps you to calm your mind and get back from the fight or flight into the rest and digest phase of your mindset.
Yeah. So through Reiki, I learned that overwhelm is a trauma response. And I was noticing, I have so many things that I want to do and accomplish on a daily basis, because I, they don't feel like it's on the to-do list. It's like, I literally want to accomplish it. And then when I look at that list, I do feel this overwhelm, and learning that that is a trauma response motivated me to say, okay, well, that's a trauma response. What can I do to work through that? And I just by chance found this channel, and it was, I think the title was Healing Trauma. So I was like, oh, perfect, I'm going to do that. So I do the breath work, and coming out of it, it's almost like I have this clarity. Okay, I'm going to start with this on the list, and then I'm going to move to this. And it almost gives me a calm mind where I can actually make a decision, which when my nervous system is fired up, it's really hard to take action. And actually, part of the reason why I reached out is because for some reason during the breath work, you guys were coming up, and I'm like, all right, this is like the third time that they're coming up. Like, I just got to reach out, So I also think that in those moments, whether it's meditation or the breath work, ideas and things and clarity comes, and that's a real gift.
Heather, I want to ask you more about this topic, because I think so many people in the chronic Lyme community have trauma, right? Whether it's medical trauma, whether it's trauma from relationships and the way they were treated. There's so many different forms of trauma we can take on as human beings. And many of us have multiple forms of trauma in the Lyme community. So I think as a result, so many of us experience that overactive nervous system. They're stuck in fight or flight. Plus, with the combination of Lyme triggering you into fight or flight, we're now overwhelmed all the time. And I know I've been through it, and you don't even realize you're in it when you're in constant fight or flight until you start to really come down a little bit and you're realizing, oh, that's what normal seems to be like again, right? So you gave us a lot of good techniques you're doing to get out of that and maintain this balance of your nervous system. But if you could just talk to us a little bit more about Reiki, because we hear about it a lot, and a lot of people who describe it for us make it sound very woo-woo, spiritual, not really real, right? But I know there's real healing power there. So if you could just give us an explanation of Reiki, if you don't mind, Heather, and tell us how it's helped you and actually what it's like to go through a Reiki session.
Yeah. So for me, I believe that Reiki has just allowed me to slow down and then understand the signals that my body is giving, which I have just never been good at. When I was younger, it's like push through, push through, push through. You feel, a pain in your knee, but you just push through. And I think I spent, many years just pushing through rather than slowing down to understand what is coming up. And I'm the type of person when I can have, I'm trying to think of a good way to explain this. I work better when I can understand the why, right? So when I realize that overwhelm was a trauma response, it gave me motivation to work through that. And I don't think I would have come to that realization had I not slowed down. And I can slow down through Reiki. So one would be, just taking that time for myself. And then the Reiki, I work with 2 different Reiki practitioners. And what I really like about them is that they put me through different meditations where it's more about visualization. And for me, that's been very powerful because things have come up that needed to come up so that I can work through them and they're no longer, residing in my body. Does that
Yeah, so
answer the
Heather,
question?
what's happening is, no, and I think this is brilliant. As always is the case with Heather Glovack. So what you're saying is that you had in your subconscious some issues that you had to work through that you weren't consciously aware of. And when you were working with the Reiki practitioner and you were going through the meditations as a practitioner, you were guided to discovering what those subconscious beliefs were. And once you were able to confront those subconscious beliefs, you were able to be released from that and no longer have them controlling you on some level.
Yeah. And also being educated on, I don't know if I'm an empath. I think I am. I've been told I am, right? And how much I absorb energy. So another modality that they use is like a cord cutting. So like I close my eyes and they take me through this visualization of cutting off all of the energies that have been attached to me. And that is very powerful. It sounds, simple and like, does that really work? For me, yes, it does. So
But Heather, I think it works for all of us. And I think, part of the reason why so many of us are having challenges when we're dealing with Lyme disease is because we've been failed by the educational system. We don't know how our mind works. So if we don't know how our mind works, we're not going to be able to control what is happening with our mind. We don't know how our body works. We don't know how our immune system works. And we have all of these different limitations in, from the educational system. And because of that, we start to sort of find ourselves believing that when we're learning this, that we're tripping into the woo-woo world, and we're really not. We're just stepping into the parts of the the knowledge we need in order to be high functioning human beings, and that's what you're doing, right? You're learning about your brain, and you're learning that at least your mind is a receiver. And causes you to be, empathic because you're receiving so much of the energy that, that you're surrounded with when you're interacting with people.
right. And, I think maybe I struggle to actually explain and define what Reiki is. And I don't know if I ever will be able to, right? Because it's very powerful. And another example, I was very tired. I had a Reiki session. She put me through a meditation. I came out of it. And for some reason, I had a thought, which I don't think I would have had this thought had I not had the Reiki session, right? Something, allowed it to come to surface, which was I needed to watch the Joe Dispenza Rewired. And I don't know why I had that random thought, right? But I did. And then I started to dive into his work, which was really eye-opening for me. So, maybe the unknown of like parts of Reiki is okay for me because I just see that it works and I trust because through experience, it's helped me a lot.
Yeah, Heather, I think so much of this is there are times where things we do help us feel better. And that's the most important thing when it comes to healing is it actually working? Are we feeling better? And if the answer is yes, then that's what we need to know. And we need to listen to our bodies, as you described earlier, right? When you're able to slow down and understand what was going on in your body and see the change, understand the change in your body, then you were able to make informed decisions and take action, right? And I think that model is applicable across various parts of the healing journey, from chronic illness and chronic Lyme disease. When you're really sick, you need to have the ability to, get away from that push through and just I'll fight through it mentality, to start being able to slow down, get your nervous system reset, so you can take healing modalities, whether it be antibiotics, whether it be herbals, whether it be something like disulfiram, hyperthermia, et cetera, to help you heal. But then beyond that, you need to take that same approach to get away from the push through mentality, have the slow down nervous system approach, and have that calming sense in your body, which promotes a healing environment and allows you to think more clearly. And when you can think more clearly, you're more in tune with your body signals, as you described, Heather. I think that was just so brilliant, because it's not just applicable to mental health and emotions, it's also applicable to your physical health, because if you can't do that, you're not going to take the proper steps to feel better and to get the appropriate treatments to get rid of all these things that are going on in your body as well. So this is a really high level approach. And I think you're sort of at the tail end of your healing phase now, where you're focusing on balancing your nervous system. You're sort of past the treatment side of the kill, 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 and you're working on resetting your body to now be in this maintenance mode post chronic Lyme disease. What are your thoughts on that, Heather?
Yeah. If we met 3 months ago, this might be a different conversation, because I was really suffering with the brain fog. But I think the one thing that has allowed me to remain hopeful is the idea of just taking responsibility. And I know I say this a lot, but when I take responsibility, I feel empowered, right? To think that the doctors are doing what they can do, right? But what is it I can do? And how awesome is it that there's information available to explore and discover? Had I not had that mindset and, had the realization that I do have the power to explore and experiment with modalities that I find online, like breath work, it has been so powerful for me. It's been so helpful for me. And when you can feel empowered like that, I think that's also a part of the healing, like maybe where the healing actually begins.
So I'm sorry, Matt. Heather, you are the responsibility gal, right? I mean, it's one of the things you've always emphasized with us during our podcast. And when Matt and I are talking about responsibility with you and other guests, one of the things that we always like to point out is that responsibility should be empowering, right? Unfortunately, that word has been co-opted by some negative forces in our culture. But what responsibility really means is respond with ability, which is really empowering. It's not something that is critical. It's not judging you. It's not telling you that you have to do something alone. It's a concept that is empowering for people like you, because you understand that what it means is to respond with ability, right? And our freedom is between an event and how we act, right? That's where we're free. And when we respond with ability, we get better outcomes. And of course, part of that is what you and Matt were just talking about, which is making sure that you're controlling your mind. And when you're controlling your mind, you then have the signals coming to you that you need to then make good decisions in the cognitive or the executive regions of your brain, which allow you to then respond with ability.
Yeah. And I also think that taking responsibility doesn't mean it's easy, right? It's like, it doesn't mean, now I'm empowered and this is easy. It can be, just as dark, but I think that your ability to get out of the darkness is much quicker when you're in that power stance. And I've really tried hard not to fall into the why me, like, why is this happening to me? Because there are days where, I'll work from home, or, the brain fog for some reason really triggers like the emotional side of me, and I try to catch myself when I get into that why me, and I try to shift into, okay, what is here and what can I learn? And I think that has really helped me.
Heather, I think not only are you learning this, but you are now sharing this with us, and you're going to be sharing it with our community and sharing it with your community. That I think, what I'm seeing as I'm stepping back and looking at this conversation, a lot of our interviews have an impact on people at different stages of the healing journey. And I think this particular discussion is going to be extremely helpful for people that are either done or close to being done with their treatment and getting into the maintenance phase, right? Because we talk to people all the time who tell us, I was better, I was symptom-free, or I was almost better, and then I had a relapse and I was worse than ever before, or I was just as bad. And what I saw, you painted this picture, and I visualized this picture you were describing, Heather, which was you were living your life, had your life back, but slowly you were getting, sicker and sicker and sicker, but you caught yourself. You did all this work on your mindset. You started doing Reiki, you started doing breath work, which now took your body from a place, and this is real science, this is not woo-woo. Your body was becoming more acidic, which means you're more likely to have disease in your body. Your body you weren't sleeping as much, your hormones were becoming less balanced, your immune system was becoming less robust because you weren't sleeping as well and because of your mental health status. And all of those things are physical, real things that contribute to relapses in chronic Lyme patients. But you caught it before it got bad. You started implementing these practices you just shared with us, and I believe you prevented a really, really significant relapse in your health. So I want to thank you for sharing that. I'm not sure if you realize how powerful what you just described really is, because this is a really important message for people that are doing better. Don't just go back to your normal lives. Don't accept the push-through attitude. When you sense things starting to change and shift, you need to react quickly. Otherwise, you will have a setback. And we know many of these pathogens, not just Lyme disease, but Epstein-Barr virus, right? A lot of these things, like Justin Bieber with what he has, a lot of these things are intracellular viruses or bacteria that never go away once we can track them. Our bodies can manage them. We can live symptom-free lives. But with current medicine and science, they're going to be with us forever. And autopsies prove this. Scientific journals have proved this. And as we start to get weaker and everything happens that you just described, these intracellular viruses and bacteria will come out and make us really sick again. And what you're giving us, Heather, is techniques and tools to not let that happen and stay healthy. So I just want to point that out and thank you, and see if you have any observations on my comments.
Yeah, well, something that came up was, I think it's easy to have this conversation right now and shine light on it. But I also want to acknowledge, the people that are really, truly still suffering and maybe don't feel that hope, because that is very real. So I don't want to only shine light on, like the end result, and this is where I'm at, and these are the things that work, and everything is perfect, So I think what I want to say is, in those moments where you're really suffering, it's just having your list of things that that work. And even if it's just choosing one, every day, just promise yourself you'll choose one of those healing modalities that will work. And not ignoring what you're feeling, but try not to let that define you or take you down.
And I think Heather, and what I'm hearing from this also, and I think I just keep getting deeper and deeper into what you're saying here, is not only is what you've learned now helpful at the stage you're at, but somebody who's much earlier on in their journey, even if they're in the aggressive kill phase, they just got diagnosed and now they're trying to get rid of all this pathogen load in their body, they can still implement breath work and Reiki and have a significant advantage in healing, because it's calming down their nervous system and it's promoting an environment of healing rather than disease in their body. So this is something that's going to be helpful to people at all stages. But I think what you showcase so beautifully, Heather, is that this is a really important piece to keep in mind all throughout your journey, even once you get to the later stages throughout the maintenance phase. So thank you for that, right? And I think that, for me, I wish I had this breath work when I was really sick and I was having constant panic attacks and I was afraid of everything. If I had these techniques that you just shared, my healing journey would have been so much easier. And again, fast forward, now it can help you stay in a position of health and not have a relapse. So I do think this is really important. And is there anything else, Heather, that you've done most recently besides the Reiki and the breath work that you want to share as far as nervous system regulation, daily techniques? Because I can tell you, I know sometimes I'll have a social interaction or something will happen. I come home and I can't get it out of my head. And it's one of those things where you, like you said, you're overwhelmed, and that's a sign of trauma. And still to this day, sometimes I have to really put in a lot of effort to break that cycle because I know it's not rational, right? Do you have any advice for people that are still struggling with those kind of things?
Well, one thing that has really worked for me is journaling. And I don't remember where I heard this, but it was what motivated me to stay committed to journaling, is getting what's up here out on paper so that you can clear space for something better. So, it's like, if you can't get it out of your head and it's not serving you, just write it out. And maybe you'll even find a resolution through your writing. So I know a lot of people aren't into journaling. I wasn't, but once I heard that, I was like, oh, yes, like I do want to clear up space up here for something better,
Right. And it does, when you get it on paper, Heather, it gives you an opportunity to explore it differently than when it's in your head. Right. And, there's that famous Abraham Lincoln story where his family went into his office after he had passed away, and they opened up his desk and they found hundreds of letters that he had written but didn't send out to other people. And it was the way that Abraham Lincoln was able to get thoughts out of his head, in many cases really nasty thoughts, and because he was able to get them out of his head and get it down on paper, he was able to then go back into a more peaceful state and be more appropriate, right? So there are a lot of different tools. Journaling is wonderful. Writing letters to people or to yourself are wonderful, but there are a lot of different ways of getting these thoughts out. But I think another powerful benefit is you are getting signals, right? And in many cases, we're not able to explore the signals because we forget about them, or they fade into our subconscious. And if we're writing them down, that puts us in a position where we can now explore those signals in a way that maybe we wouldn't be able to if we didn't write them down.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes even after you write it down, like I know this has happened many times for me. I'll see it on paper. I'm like, oh, what was I even stressing out about? So it's just like getting it out of here is just so helpful.
Yeah, I mean, in our imagination, it becomes so much bigger than it really is. And if we just get it down on paper, we can explore it. One of our other followers talks about putting your thoughts on trial, right? It's easier to put your thought on trial. And instead of having the boogeyman under the bed or in our head, we really have it on paper, and it's not so scary anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have two other like healing modalities, in addition to different supplements and treatments that I've been doing. So I don't know if you want to hear about all of them. So through Reiki, I was introduced to Dr. Samet, and initially it was for homeopathy. And at first I was like, okay, I was feeling a little resistant, but usually when I'm resistant, like, it's like because I'm being challenged, like if I don't understand it, it's like, ooh, I'm a little resistant. So maybe I just need to understand. So I met with Dr. Samet, and she put me on a couple remedies. Well, one remedy at first. And just like with most treatments, it kind of gets worse before it gets better. And for me, the remedy that I was put on, I more or less had more of an emotional response, which at the time seemed overwhelming. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this. But I stuck with it, and I actually started to feel better. however, the brain fog, still was there, and she put me on another remedy. And within a couple days, that's where I started to really feel the fog lift. But I do want to say that in addition to seeing her for homeopathy, I also started to do emotional repatterning with her, which again, I may not explain this in the best way, but there are YouTube videos, and she does have a book. But it's basically taking both hemispheres of the brain, and so basically it's taking you into the subconscious, right? So if we're living at a 5% conscious, 95% subconscious, you consciously want to heal. Well, that's 5% when your subconscious is hardwired and addicted to feeling sick, or the habits that aren't serving you, the thoughts, the beliefs that aren't serving you. So her modality gets you into the subconscious, and it helps you reprogram those beliefs. And I found that very powerful. So it's similar to brain, or I think it's called brain gym. I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
Yeah.
So that's where her journey began, was through brain gym. And then she's like, wait, there's something here. So, she took that and kind of created her own protocol. And, it's basically just getting through the layers of the subconscious, the root of why, for me, I, have been stuck for so long.
And Heather, this sounds so woo-woo again, right? But this is very similar to brain rewiring techniques like DNRS and Gupta and My Vital Side. And even some people, I believe this is related to things like psilocybin, right? That are things that help sort of rewire your brain in a way you can't do consciously, right? So I think these are, and in fact, there are universities, major universities, studying things like this to help heal people from real physical illnesses like chronic Lyme disease. So there's something there. We're starting to really put more effort into studying this. And I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see even more about this. And you're just on the early cusp of learning about these types of things. I do want to ask you, Heather, the formulas you were on with her, the 2 tinctures, do you know what was in them? Because it sounds like they were pretty helpful. First, just get you some symptom relief in general. And then the second remedy you were on helped you with your brain fog significantly. Were these proprietary blends she made on her own, or were these things you bought online that you can share, what the make and the name of the company is of who you bought them from?
Yeah, you can actually get them online. I get them from her just because that just felt right for me. And the first remedy, and I would do research or maybe even work with a practitioner, because I think there's a rhyme and reason to what she does per individual, but conium was one of them. And then phosphorus, I'm definitely butchering that, but you can get the remedies at Whole Foods, or I think any nutrition store.
What was the second one? So the first one was conium, Conium, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And what was the second one? Do you have the spelling of that? I'm just trying to.
It's KLI, and then PHRP. Wait, phosphorus, PHROPUS. If you Google it, it'll definitely come up.
Gotcha.
Even if you Google Kali P, KALI-P, it will come up.
Gotcha. I'm doing that as we speak, actually. Oh, here it is. Kali-P, KALI-P, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So these are good things to know, just because people always ask us all the time, well, what was it specifically that Heather did? Can you ask her? So it's just we like to ask on the podcast, just so people can even ask their doctors, like you said, to see if there's something that can help them possibly. So I know we said this was going to be about a half hour, and of course we went over, as we always do, because we're talkers. But
Yeah,
Rich and I, from the bottom of our hearts, Heather, just want to thank you for coming back on. Just feeling called to reach out to us and share this with our community and share this with us. We're so honored to have you back on and have you as a friend and constantly share what you're learning with us and our community. So Heather, thank you so much for coming back on and sharing everything you've learned recently.
yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.